Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Family Matters tonight. Tonight we're talking to Luke and Vicky Smith. And Luke and Vicky have experienced the heartbreaking loss of one of their children some years ago. Their journey through heartache has been comforted by hope. But their journey is really inspiring. And we're going to hear their story tonight. Tonight we're going to learn to sit alongside those who have experienced such losses, join them in their tears. And we'll be encouraged by Luke and Vicky's faith in God's hand in their lives. We'll hear how hope in the resurrection has been foundational in helping them cope with their pain and loss. So welcome, Luke and Vicky. It's really good to have you here tonight.
Thanks for having us.
And especially since we know you've just shared with us, you're not feeling so very well, so very much appreciate that you're taking the time to do this with us tonight, even feeling somewhat under the weather.
Yeah, so thank you very much. So I wanted to do a Bible reading, and we're going to start with from 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 3. We'll just start there and probably read down to verse 7. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in trouble with the comfort we ourselves have received from God. For just as the sufferings of Christ flow over into our lives, so also through Christ our comfort overflows. If we are distressed, it is for your comfort and salvation. If we are comforted, it is for your comfort, which produces in you patient endurance of the same sufferings we suffer. And our hope for you is firm, because we know that just as you share in our sufferings, so also you share in our comfort. So with that, let's just start with a little bit of background. Can you tell us a little bit about your family? Because you've got a bit of a unique family. We've got 4 children, and I think you've eclipsed us well and truly several times. So,
which is a whole nother story in itself.
So do you want to just tell us a little bit about your family and set the stage for us?
Do you want to run through the kids?
No. Well, I'm not sure how much detail you want, but we've got 12 children, or had 12 children, if we include Jamaa, and Vicky's expecting our 13th.
In 5 weeks.
Oh, 5 weeks.
Wow.
Oh, so soon.
Our eldest is married. She's got 2 children of her own. Jacinta.
Okay.
My grandparents as well then.
Yep,
Yeah.
married to Luke Hilgis, and then Jemima was next. And then Lara is 21. Lawson is 18. Sahara is 15. Eliza is 14. Zahara's soon to turn 16. Eliza's 14. Joshua's 11. Mariah is 9. Jordana is 8. And then the twins are next. We've got identical twins. They are 5.
Twins as well.
Yeah. Grace and Sophia. So I should not just call them the twins, Grace and Sophia. And then Jeddy, he's 2.5, almost 3.
Wow. And another one in a few weeks.
5
5 weeks.
Yeah, in
Wow.
about 5. Yeah.
Oh, so you are a very, very busy family.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we once heard cheaper by the dozen.
Sorry?
We once heard that they were cheaper by the dozen.
Yeah, fair
And
enough.
is that true?
No, I don't think so.
No, okay.
That sounds like a subject we must keep up our sleeves for another day.
Yeah. So Jemima was your second child. So tell us a little bit about her. What happened?
Yeah.
So she was 2.5 when she first was diagnosed with leukemia, and she had 4 months of intense chemo because she had an adult leukemia. So it was a nasty version for a child to have, basically. She had 4 months of intense treatment. We lived at the hospital, at which time Lara was born down there at the hospital.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
that must have been extremely stressful for you.
Well, that's what everybody kind of said, but to us it was amazing because she was such a bright little bunch of fresh air to come along, and Jemima, through her sickness, would just thrive on having this little baby up on the bed beside her, and yeah, it was actually a huge blessing in hindsight. Well, not even in hindsight. At the time,
Yes.
it was actually amazing to have a little baby amongst it all. Just something joyful.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
she had,
you had this was you had 4 children at that stage. Then was Lara your fourth?
Yeah,
Third.
Lara was the third.
Third. Okay.
She was
Right.
born during the treatment. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So we had 2 when she was diagnosed. We had Jacinta and Jemima, and she was diagnosed when she was 2.5, and Lara was born at the hospital during that initial round of treatment.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And how did that all go?
Yeah, well, probably amazingly well from a medical point of view, in that she kind of passed through with flying colours. I don't want to make that sound like there was plenty of stressful and traumatic times, but sort of from a medical point of view, she
They told us it would take 6 months.
Yeah, they kind of indicated it would probably take 6 months to get through the process, but at the end of 4 months, she managed to pull through pretty well, and we were able to go home.
So we literally lived at the hospital. They allowed us to come home for 3 days, I think, halfway through the treatment. Otherwise, we lived like Luke's boss just put his job on hold, and we lived at the hospital because it was very intense treatment.
Okay. And so your children, Jacinta, she was there with you as well? Everyone was there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we had a little unit. They gave us a little unit in the hospital grounds.
Okay.
And so I'd go back to that every night. Luke stayed with Jemima because I was pregnant. I wasn't allowed to touch any body fluids off Jemima because it was so toxic from the chemo. So I couldn't change. I wasn't allowed to change any nappies because I was pregnant. Nothing. So
It's quite convenient.
So I could touch her, but just nothing, no body fluids. So Luke, he stayed with her every night, and I took Jacinta back to the unit and stayed back at the unit.
Yeah. And what sort of prognosis had they given you at that particular time?
At the beginning, they said 40% chance of long term, but because she went so amazing with the treatment, when she finished, I think they bumped it up to 60. Was it?
Somewhere there, I don't remember exactly. Yeah, somewhere around.
Yeah.
Around 60%.
50%.
60 by the time we finished, I think it was, of long-term survival, like into the future.
Okay.
It's all a little bit funny, to be honest, but they kind of said if she gets first 3 months, it was a good sign. So I don't remember exactly. Vicky might remember, but she would have a blood test every week, I think, initially
yeah.
for the first, 6 weeks, and then it might have gone to 2 weeks for the next 6 weeks, and then sort of went to a month, and then eventually a couple of months. So that first 3 months was their real sort of pivotal point, and then
because it was an aggressive leukemia.
Okay.
And then, eventually it got to a year and sort of 2 years, and I guess the worry and concern that you have as a parent every time there's a little flu or an infection or something that never quite disappears for parents of kids with leukemia, but you started to relax a little bit more, and at some point, I don't remember exactly, we took her for her, maybe it was an annual appointment, and her specialist said that as far as they are concerned, they considered her cured.
Wow.
Right.
Because every blood test had been perfect, and She was so healthy, like any of the other kids. She never got sick more than they did. She just was so well that they just, in the end said, well, she's got to 3 years. She's right now. Like, she'd be pretty right for life. Yeah.
So that was pretty much 6 months later.
No, like when they said that was like 3 years later. That's just before we went to Fiji.
3 years later. Okay, not 3 years old. Okay.
3 years, somewhere there.
Approximately when we decided to go to Fiji and asked if the doctor thought it was an okay thing to do. He said, "Oh,
Yep.
she's good. She's
fine.
She's fine for life," kind of thing. She's been so well for 3 years.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, his exact words to me, I still remember to this day, were, as far as we're concerned, we consider her cured.
Okay.
And that was kind of our pre-appointment, just sort of checking in. Everything's okay. Are we okay to head to Fiji? So we planned a mission trip to Fiji for 3 months, and that was kind of our last check-in before we headed off.
Okay.
So that must have been a huge relief to you to get that sort of news. You know, where you got aggressive cancer and everything.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
must have left you pretty much on a high.
Yeah, I guess so. Once you've been down that path, you're always slightly cautious. I think, you'd never, but yeah, from a medical point of view, it was wonderful news for sure.
Mm.
Yeah.
So at this stage, Jemima was 6 years old. Is that correct? At the time when you were planning this trip to Fiji?
Well, she died just before her 6th birthday, about 12 days short, I think it was. So,
so she was still 5.
She was a bit over 5 and a
almost
half
6.
or something when we left. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So-
Okay, well, tell us about your trip to Fiji. You had 4 children at this stage?
Yes.
Yeah, so Lawson was 1. And yeah, I don't even remember exactly how it had happened, but we'd been to Fiji earlier on with a work trip, and so we had some connections, and I don't remember the exact thought process, but I think in our minds it was just kind of, hey, we're all back together as a family. That's in the past. Let's do something together. And there was obviously some praying and considering about it, and Fiji came up because of our connection there, and we made some inquiries, and it was all sort of, we'd love you to come. The ecclesia has a real need at the moment, and so we made plans to go and headed off for 3 months. Sort of resigned
So was
from
this
work.
mission work or for a holiday?
No, it was
mission
mission
work.
work. Yeah.
Mission work, yeah.
So there's a whole lot of sorting out. We in those days had very little money at all, and we managed to get someone in to rent our house, and even just for 3 months, and work agreed to hold my job for me for 3 months while we left. So everything that needed to fall into place just fell in place, basically.
Right.
And so we proceeded to head off, and head off we did.
Mm.
Okay.
And then we were halfway through the trip. The trip, and Jemima just started getting a bit of a swollen eye, just a little bit red, and I'd actually forgotten, but we've both just gone a little bit over our diaries. We both wrote diaries when we went to Fiji this afternoon, and she also had a little lump under her on that side as well. But we, obviously just get a bit concerned, but got the doctor's words in your ears that she'll be fine and she's all good. So we rang the specialists back in Australia, and they said, if you just get some blood tests over there, find a good doctor and get the results sent to us, I'm sure it's fine. We did all of that, and the blood test showed she was all good, and leukemia is a cancer of the blood. So however, we worked out today from the diary, from the first noticing of her sore eye to the day that she actually died was 2 weeks. So that's how fast it happened.
Wow.
So she
That's incredible.
perfectly okay, and then 2 weeks later she was gone. So it was very aggressive, as we would expect, a relapse.
So they had always warned us that if it ever did come back, there was limited hope. It would be extremely aggressive. So in other words, if the cancer has responded to the treatment and then the cancer, overcomes that treatment, it was like it would come back even more aggressive again.
Right.
I think it's probably important in the story to just explain how wonderful that, first 6 weeks we're over there together. I guess, in the benefit of hindsight, and with everything that just sort of worked out to make it work and for it to come together, we see God working with us to give us that, special, uninterrupted 6 weeks. And yeah, it was just a wonderful time. Since then, and forever, Fiji will be a very special place for us.
Yeah. So it was basically 6 months of really bonding as a family, and
6 weeks.
6 weeks rather. So
yeah.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So then we started getting little suspicions. We had these blood tests. The result come back negative, and we're kind of going, well, what do we do here? As parents, you just kind of felt something's not quite right, but you're not getting anything solid. So we kind of just sort of continued on over the next few days, and I guess we probably saw some more worrying signs, but we're still just not getting anything solid. And then we'd planned to visit a brother and sister on an island off the mainland, a little island called Kandavu. And we kind of sort of somewhat reluctantly, we've asked ourselves since, was it the right thing? But, everything works out in the end. We made the decision to go, and it was a boat trip. It was a boat trip across to this little island. And when we pulled up very early in the morning, because it was overnight, and we got out of this boat, and as they ferried everyone to shore to walk up to the village, at the bottom of this sort of little sort of incline leading up to the village, Jemima just turned to me and said, "Dad, I can't walk up there." And I think for us, that was the moment in which we just went, "Oh."
I was just reading in my diary this afternoon that moment we just both looked at each other and just like with an alarmed look, swapped glances. I just read because I was just rehashing my diary this afternoon. And that was probably a moment that we were both like, there is something wrong. The blood tests are not showing what's really going on.
Yeah.
There.
So you were on an island, a day's trip away by boat.
Yeah, so it was a bit of a predicament. We went up to this brothers and sisters' house, and we're in the midst of sort of processing what we're realizing, but they've been looking forward to this trip literally for weeks. So, there's kind of this excitement, but we're trying to relay to them, there's a serious medical issue unfolding here. And, I don't remember the exact conversation, but it was something like, we've got to get out of here as soon as we can. And the boat,
there's no power, there's nothing on the island. It's just
the boat only goes, every so many days, and then there is a plane that comes, every other day type thing. So in the end, we had to wait out there 2 days, and then we had to take a boat trip around to the main town, Vunasia, I think it was, and then we had to fly back in this little plane back to Suva on the mainland before we were admitted into the hospital there for sort of further tests. And I think we were 2 days on the island, and correct me if anything, that's
I think so.
2 days, and then it took about 24 hours or a little bit less when we got to the hospital there for them to do further blood tests and come back and tell us, So just in those few days from getting a negative result back from Brisbane to a couple of days later, the leukemia was showing again.
So how was Jemima's health looking at the time, those 2 days on the island? What was happening at that time?
Well, I remember we were like thinking one night she was literally not going to make it through the night. We had our own bedroom, but we all just spent the night in the lounge room with the brother and sister, literally. And this is the stuff that we look back on. Yeah, we had the meeting.
We had a meeting together that night. It's sitting around on the floor together. One of the most, special meetings I remember. Sharing bread and wine, singing hymns, and you
I
know.
think we sung hymns till 2 o'clock in the morning or something, and we just all slept on the
Oh,
floor together.
that's
Nobody
just
went.
incredible.
Nobody went back to
Wow.
their rooms or anything, and she was struggling all night.
I think, well, she did. She developed pneumonia fairly quickly, so that was starting to affect her. The leukemia cells are starting to progress through the body, and but we got through that night, and I remember the second night being a little bit better. I'm not sure why or for what reason. And then we started to see a rapid decline. We managed. There was one phone. This is before sort of mobile phones and texting quick messages, back internationally, all that sort of thing. So there was one phone on the island which didn't always work, but we managed to make a call out from the island both to Vicky's mum and to my mum. At that stage we knew nothing, but we kind of knew everything. We had nothing confirmed, and we just felt like we had to let them know at that point, something's not right. We're doing everything we can to get out of here, type thing.
Yeah.
So we got to Suva. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's right. You carry on. I was just going to say you got to Suva and you were in the hospital. Carry on.
Yeah, did she spend one night or two? Maybe one night in hospital in Suva. They just didn't want to anything to do with it. We got blood tests back and it was confirmed it was leukemia, and we had to get her out quickly on a medical flight, like a little jet with a doctor and nurses and whatever else. And so Luke took that flight with her, which was one of the little booster things for us along the way, because they told us that no one would be able to go with Jemima. She'd have to go on her own. So at the time, at that minute, that was just a major thing for us, because all we wanted to do was make sure she was comfortable and happy. And a little 6-year, she was a week or two from 6. That's just a scary age for a child, not knowing where they are, what's going on, and whatever else.
Absolutely.
So, excuse me.
So we managed. So after them having to, telling us that I probably couldn't go, we made the decision to book flights for Vicky and the other kids back. So I sent them from Suva back to the airport, which is on the other side of the main island, and they got tickets back. And she called me from the airport.
Which I didn't get you, hey? I got the
you
nurse.
got the nurse, yeah, because they were coming to collect us, and as soon as they arrived, they said, yeah, fine to go. So Vicky got a message that I was going with her. We travelled back to Brisbane.
So I was just reading in my diary this afternoon that we were just fervently praying that Luke could go on the plane, and I got to the Nandi airport and rang back to the Suva hospital to find out what happened, and the nurse said, oh yeah, he's gone with her, they're on their way. And Jacinta was only, what would she have been, 8. And I was just reading in my diary this afternoon that I was just so excited. I said to the nurse, oh, I'm so thankful to God and whatever else. And I wrote in there that Jacinta was just dancing around on the floor saying thank you to God, and she wanted to sing something. And the nurse just said to me, okay, God bless you on your, because Fijian people are quite religious. But yeah, it's just interesting reliving that little moment, because that was a major, it was a huge thing to us. Here's our child that's relapsed with leukemia, but right then in that moment, that's all our prayer was, that one of us could be with her for the whole journey. So that the boost for that little minute, and then we plane and come back.
It must have been a terribly stressful time, this whole process, though.
Yeah, it's very stressful. Limited sleep over, I'm not sure how many days. I actually do remember the Learjet flight from Suva back to Brisbane was actually incredibly beautiful. I think it was just the time of afternoon or the height they were flying with the clouds, and sometimes those sort of things can just give you a little bit of comfort. And I remember being incredibly tired, and kind of we're finally on the plane and on the way home, and it was probably a bit of a, I'm not sure, but I remember falling asleep and the nurse trying to wake me up saying, oh, like Jemima's upset. She wants to know that you're there. So, I'd hop up and sort of talk to her and comfort her and just sit down again, and I'd be out again, But
Right.
we arrived back in Brisbane, taken to the Brisbane Royal Children's Hospital. All the, many of the same nurses that we'd seen there over our period were there, greeting us. And I remember one particular one who just said, "Oh, we're just so sorry to see you guys back here again."
Jemima's photo, still, I was reading this in my diary this afternoon as well. Her photo, like us thanking the staff and everything at the hospital, was still on the notice board. Just bright, happy face. She was all well. And it was kind of like, it was just like a disbelief that we possibly could be back at that place. Just the realization.
Was there ever a question in your mind about why God had allowed it to be this way?
Don't think so.
I remember going through stages thinking like, oh my goodness, should we have not gone back to Fiji? Maybe something in Fiji did it. But then like Luke would remind me like that was actually God preparing us for it, because we had 6 weeks. Normally if we had been at home, Luke would have been rushing off to work every day. But little things, sometimes I would go through little stages of just briefly going, oh, what if we didn't go over there? Maybe something in Fiji caused it to relapse. But, like this is just little, wasn't like I dwelt on that for days and I'd be like, no, that's right. Like God was in control. That's why we went there.
It's kind of difficult to put everything into words and to explain, but, in hindsight, I've since said in later years that she was 2.5 when she was diagnosed, and at the rate that she was declining at 2.5, they told us that she'd only last 2 weeks if we didn't have the intervention of the treatment.
Right.
And when a child's 2.5, you see little characteristics, but by the time they're 6, you really get to know them. So those 3 years were quite a big. Were big in her life for us to come to know who she was as a person, and allowed her to become.
Well, they develop quite faithful.
Yeah, a faithful child.
Wow.
And to see those characteristics. So, in a sense, sure. I mean, we're all human. We question things, but at the same time, there's so many things that ultimately we're grateful for.
Yes. Yeah. That's beautiful. So what happened once she was in the hospital over in Australia?
So she pretty much the next morning they said, right, we want to just don't let her have anything to eat or drink. We're going to put a line in so that it makes it easier to take blood and give medicine, like a central line through her main vein. Also, they wanted to pop a little camera down and have a look in her lungs and just see what was going on with the leukemia cells. That was the very next morning upon arriving in Australia. So she was only in hospital one night where she was consciously aware of being in hospital. So they gowned Luke up. I've just read all this in my diary this afternoon. That's why I've got it all fresh. And just so she was comfortable, popped her on his lap in the wheelchair. They wheeled him down in the wheelchair with her on his lap so she could just snuggle in. And we just told her they're just going to weigh you and measure your height. We just tried to keep her as naive as possible because she was almost 6 by this stage. And I think she did like have flashbacks of being there like as a 2.5-year-old. So yeah, our whole thing was just to make sure she wasn't scared. So we're just like, you're just going down to get you weighed, and they gave us some Phenergan and stuff to just make her a bit sleepy. But for us, like, because we knew how serious it was, we were just praying so hard that if she couldn't get through without torturous treatment, please just let her go very quickly. Maybe not even come out of the anaesthetic, whatever it took, just for her not to have to face the cruel. It's just such a horrible treatment. We knew that if she was going to have treatment from a relapse, it would be bone marrow transplant, which is really nasty. We watched kids go through it. We watched kids when Jemima had her first lot of treatment go through that, and it's just awful, like unspeakably awful. So in our head, we were just praying that if God was, if she wasn't going to make it, let her go peacefully. And I remember, and I've written once again, read my diary this afternoon. I just remember I just gave her a little kiss on the cheek or something and said, "See you, darling." But in my head, I was literally thinking, like, I remember clearly in my head saying, "Oh, like, I'll see you in the kingdom." I really didn't think she would come out of it.
Yeah.
And then I didn't say that to her. I just gave her a kiss, and I read in my diary after I went round the corner and just bawled my eyes out. And I went back to her room and opened my Bible, and the chapter it opened was Isaiah 61. And I wrote the quote down because I thought I might forget. I'd forgotten about this little incident, but I opened my Bible and it said, it was just like the verse jumped off the page about the seed being blessed in the kingdom, that our children will be known as the seed that Yahweh has blessed, like referring to the children of the saints.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just unbelievable, because in my head she was going under anesthetic and that would be it. Only because we knew that the chance of survival after relapsing was basically nil. And we were just praying. Anyway, she was under anesthetic for like 3 hours, which was meant to be an hour under anesthetic.
Oh.
And we were in the room and the doctors were pacing up and down outside. You could see they were quite stressed, talking to each other quietly, and we were just like, oh my goodness, something is obviously wrong. Just tell us what's going on so we can just go and see her. I think we ended up going out to them and just said, what's going on? Like, this was meant to be an hour. And 3 hours later, we still haven't been called to see her. And they spilt out that they'd accidentally punctured her lung in the process of putting the camera down.
Oh, no.
And that she was actually in intensive care, and went on with I remember them just going on with all the detail, and we were just like, okay, but just let us go and see her. Like, we probably weren't absolutely shocked, were we? Because we were both just going, yeah, well, we've prayed for God's will, that if she's not going to make it, don't let her have to wake up to go through torturous treatment and see all these little kids in the rooms crying and with no hair and all of that stuff. And she never had to face that again, because she never come out of intensive care. So, so we rushed around wherever far away it was to the intensive care ward, and I think she was in there for 2 nights.
I don't think so, because it was only 2 days. I think
maybe it was only 2 days.
I think another night, maybe like a night and the next morning she died.
It's actually a complete blur.
So about 2 days from when we arrived back from Suva. 2 days later, she died anyway.
Yeah.
Right. Incredibly fast.
Yeah, it was very fast. She never come out of that, and we were able to sit with her for her last few breaths, and
all her major organs just shut down one after the other, pretty much. And they said to us, if she manages to come out of intensive care, she'd probably be on a kidney machine for the rest of her life, and this and that. And in the end, we had to just make the decision to take her off the whatever keeps them alive life support machine. Because they just basically said to us that even if she somehow come out, they might be able to offer us about a 7 to 10% chance of survival if they manage to be able to treat her. But in the process, she'd have to be probably on a dialysis machine forever, because everything had shut down properly. So that decision was completely taken off us, which eased it in that regard.
Wow, what a hard time. Yeah.
Then they just harrowing.
Then they all the family was in the waiting room. I remember that. I had Lawson. I was still feeding him, and my sister ended up she took him off somewhere, and I don't know what happened with where Jacinta was.
She was with my mum. I remember going and getting Jacinta.
Yeah, it's such a blur. But they took Jemima and put her in a little quiet room. This is a huge memory in my head, and we just had just us and Jacinta. I don't remember where Lawson was. Maybe he wasn't with us. I don't know.
I think it was. Other people coming into the room.
Was he? But we were just on our own to start with. We just they just call it the quiet room. She was just lying on a bed without all the tubes and all the beeping, and she looked so incredibly just like she was asleep. It was amazing. And somehow, I was thinking through this today, do you remember we actually just sung, just us, and Jacinta sung Teach Me Thy Way? I look back and don't know how, but yeah, we actually managed to sit around the bed and just hold a little hand and sing that. That's always been a special hymn for us because, for me, I always remember we sung that in that room with her. And yeah, just had a little, I don't know how long we were in the room for, but and then other family members could come in. But through the whole ordeal, I would say the most difficult thing was actually walking away from that room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Luke had to basically drag me away. You can't actually comprehend that. That was probably the hardest. You're always there for your child, and then you literally just walk out, shut the door, and walk away and go down to the car park. That's probably the hardest moment of everything for me. Actually just walking away, knowing you're getting further and further away.
Yeah.
Oh, so hard.
Yeah.
Tell us about hope. I think we need to hear a little bit of hope at this point in time. I know hope has been a really big part of your journey, and has been something that has just really kept you grounded and keeping on going, really.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the interesting thing for us, and I think I can include this in talking about hope, is we went home. You've got all the trauma and the disbelief and the fogginess going on in your head, and we organised a funeral, and all that unfolded and went on, and as we said at the start, we had 3 months off when we were roughly 6 weeks in, and we just had no idea what to do with ourselves. We had people in our house, and I know we just kind of shake our heads today.
As in we had people renting our house.
Yeah, we had people renting our house, and we still had return tickets back from Fiji. So in something like less than a week after she died, we hopped on a plane and went back to Fiji. We spent a few days on our own, and then went back amongst the brothers and sisters there who were in sort of a state of shock and disbelief as well. We've been this family amongst them for 6 weeks. Next minute we're on a plane home. Next minute they hear she's dead. Next minute they hear there's a funeral. So we didn't know what we were doing. But we did, and I think in talking about hope, the thing for us that just remained certain and sure was that God had been with us. We'd seen evidence of it. We didn't particularly always understand, and we had so many dark nights, wandering around the beach and, I guess pleading and asking and wondering about all things. But I'm not exactly sure when I formed the opinion, but I was certain that God works with us and with our children in a wonderful way, and our confidence and hope and faith that God can raise children has never diminished, or that's been the thing that's got us through it. And
well, I mean, that's even upon the decision to say to them, sure, turn the life support machine off if we don't want it to suffer anything. If we didn't have that, I didn't forget to talking about hope, the opening the Bible thing, we sat beside her bed in intensive care and were in a state of numbness but desperation for strength. And the amount of times obviously we just had our Bible with us because there was nothing else that could possibly give us any words, that we would open the Bible, and I shared that other quote, but I remember 2 other times that we just opened the Bible, and one was don't be afraid, just believe. And then I remember one other time we opened it just sitting beside her bed, and it was about the children playing in the streets of Jerusalem and just the joy of it. And just sitting there beside her with her sick little body just wasting away, it was like God saying, it's okay. Like, that day is literally a blink for her because she's just going to sleep. And yeah, that was massive. That carries me through to this day, looking back on those moments.
Yes. Yeah.
And you
And
put something special on a tombstone too, didn't you? On a tombstone, gravestone.
Yeah. We've just got Jemima Kate Smith, our precious little girl, weep not, she is not dead but sleepeth. Just the Luke 21 quote. Is it Luke 21? Yeah.
so it's the
another one.
quote with Jairus' daughter.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, like the interesting thing is over the years we've stayed in contact with different parents, and we've spoken to people from time to time, those who've also, I'm talking about non-believers who have also lost a child, and, you know, for them, they speak about how they were unable to leave their home for, you know, 2 years, and they just lived in darkness. And the funny thing is, we understand that, and we don't know where we would be without that hope. It is literally only the hope that we've got that's brought us to where we are today. And, you know,
Kept you going.
There's
Yeah.
nothing else. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed after one time, just sitting there going, I don't feel like anything will be funny again. You can't, like, you don't actually think you'll ever see the funny side of anything, or you'll even be able to laugh again, you know. But Luke would say to me, we've got other children to live for, and we've got everything. We've got nothing. Like, we might have lost Jemima, but we've got everything. If you look at it from a more up, like, rise above that, down in that trench, we do have everything. We will look back, and we'll look back as though it's just a blip, you know, and also necessary to get us to the end result.
Yeah.
So, question I'm interested in is, you know, when people go through this sort of thing, often their marriages, you know, disintegrate. How did your marriage cope with all the stresses that went on at that time? I mean, obviously you're still together, and that's great, and you're obviously very happy. But you know, what got you through that? You know, marriage-wise.
It's an interesting question. I do remember at one stage reading that for parents that lose children, they're one of the highest rates of people that divorce because of the friction that causes. I've actually since wondered, you know, maybe part of God's mercy, I don't know. When Jemima was first diagnosed, when she was 2.5, I feel like we had that 4 months in Brisbane. From my perspective, our relationship was terrible. We were disconnected. We were kind of living 2 lives in sort of an extreme circumstance with limited choice in what we were doing. And of course, you push through, but
we were only in our early 20s.
Yeah, and
Right.
I think I've kind of looked back and wondered if we would have survived if she died then at 2.5, if our marriage would have. But look, we've gone on. Things haven't always been easy, and you know, there's difficult times, but I don't really know how to answer that question.
I just think it's God. I think that's the answer. When you're
Yeah.
both on the same page and have a complete hope and faith in the future, then you have something to live for together. Without that, who knows where you would be, you know. But when you have that absolute and total conviction, and you're both sharing it together, and both of our families were both fully supportive and, you know, in that belief and hope with us, then that gets you through, you know.
Yeah.
I do remember, so, you know, eventually we come back from Fiji and we move back into our house and life goes back to normal. And, you know, it's kind of really difficult trying to put into words, all of a sudden you're a family of 5 to a family of 4. It's really strange. And
Yeah.
I just remember as the provider just always having this difficulty calculating, and kind of almost to this day, someone says, oh, how many kids you got? Apart from the fact we've got so many, you're never quite sure what to say. Do I say we've got this many, or if I leave them out, am I sort of, disregarding them in some way? So you've always got this battle around your family size, or I just remember being conscious of coming home from work. I'd be out working all day, but Vicky's still in the same family home with all the same memories, and everything's different for everyone. But we just made a very spur of the moment decision that we needed to hop out of the house to have a fresh
I couldn't deal with being there, actually.
a fresh start, and we moved away for about 2.5 years, and
Right.
we had some
Yeah.
new landscape.
I think it was really helpful for us.
Not everyone's the same, but that worked for us before we come back sort of 2.5 years later. That in itself, that 2.5 years wasn't an easy journey, but still God's been with us through all of it and continues to.
Yeah. I just find your faith so inspiring. Really do.
It's awesome.
Just amazing. And it's
we've had plenty of well, I guess we've never wavered in our belief and faith that the future is what we're living for, but we've still had plenty of I don't know what you'd want to say, but moments where you just go to pieces or whatever,
Of course. Yeah, absolutely, you would. But nonetheless, I just I sense a real peace about you both. It's like this incredible peace that you've got in your life, and I can only say that it must be, something that's given from God.
Yeah.
And that has come from your unwavering hope.
The comfort that came from God.
Yeah.
That you're sharing right now.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's difficult. I mean, there's certainly many times where I can speak for myself here, I don't feel faithful, and there's many times when I ask God to forgive me for my faithlessness or for not remembering or whatever it might be. And the thing that I've learned is that faith goes up and down, that for a moment, but ultimately we trust that God's working and He's going to finish what He started, and we don't understand. We don't always see the end picture, but it will unfold in due time.
I've actually found it helpful sometimes to think of it as like our lives are like written out in a book, and some of the chapters are pretty horrendous and nasty. They feel nasty at the time. But so long as the last chapter is that we're all in the kingdom, we wouldn't want the book to go any other way. It's kind of weird to think of it because obviously we miss Jemima so badly, and we just, it's unspeakable joy to think of being reunited. But we wouldn't want to change anything in that book if it didn't get us to the end result, and God knows perfectly what we need. So we go, well, some of the chapters in between are necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah.
People must have responded to you as far as, you've lost a child. What were some of the really helpful things that people have done or said or whatever?
Well, we've got a box full of cards and letters, which is amazing, from all over the world, all over the place. Brothers and sisters you don't even know. And I think when we chatted last time, Luke shared something that was very helpful. What was that?
Yeah, so there's it's just so many, but I think the thing that one brother wrote to me and shared put a really good perspective on it for me is that, if we think about how that God's molding and shaping us, he just said to me, you don't know what you're going through now may be a role that you will play in the kingdom, and that you will have some sort of empathy or understanding to deal with people who've gone through the exact same thing. And, that there'll be some sort of special role we don't know what that might be, of course, but I just, I personally found that helpful to think about the fact that, and we all know it, of course, there's so many passages we can go to that talk about it, but the fact that particular traumatic and difficult incident in our life was actually something that would be outworked in a way that is used in the future for the glory of God in some way.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Mm. Are there some things that were, that as we try and speak to people that might be in a grieving situation, are there some things that are sort of no-go, shouldn't do sort of things that are unhelpful?
Things that are unhelpful, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think, the number one thing, and I'm sure we've all heard it before, but perhaps we don't always remember, is to never say to someone what they're going through, because we don't. For us, we've found even in losing a child, we've always hesitated in going anywhere near by saying to someone, we understand what you're going through, because everyone's situation is unique and different.
Right.
The thing that the kind of the opposite thing for that into what you should say is, I think you should always acknowledge it and always speak about it. For most people, it's far better off just being put out there and said, hey, you might not see a person, or you see them at some stage down the track, and just say, we're just, you might have already sent them a card or something, but when you get an opportunity just to say them, we don't know what to say, but we just want you to know that.
It's frozen.
Are we still on?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Just some acknowledgement that this has gone on and that you're thinking of them, and to sort of pass by, and it's a real difficult thing to talk about for people.
Yes.
But just be open about it, and don't hide it.
Don't hide it. Don't ignore it, because by ignoring it, you kind of want your you don't want your child or who you love to be forgotten. Like we make Jemima so real in our life. Actually, I was going to bring a photo to hold up just so that you could see.
Oh, that would be lovely. Yeah.
We've got a big photo in our lounge room, and we've got photos of her around. We talk about her. She's a real part of our family. In fact, all of our kids would probably think they know her, but they don't. So, yeah, don't ignore somebody's because you're uncomfortable. Acknowledge that person, because they don't. Most people don't want that person to be forgotten as if they never were, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is our especially the twins, they're always sort of bouncing around, and someone will ask about, their brothers or something, and they'll say, oh, we've got 12 brothers and sisters, and one's dead, they'll say, and her name's this, and she's our big sister. So,
sometimes people get uncomfortable, but they're just straight out there like, this is what it is.
Yeah.
So we've always made that something in the family that, it's not forgotten. It's not a dark part of history that we won't talk about it. We talk about it, and
she's still part of your family.
Yeah.
That's
but
great.
without God, we wouldn't. That's what it comes back down to.
Yeah.
So what would you say, just one last question if we can, what would you say to other families who are going through sickness or loss with their children right now? Have you got what last comfort or encouragement would you be able to give to them?
I would just say God is there, and his plan is always perfect, regardless of how it's feeling and how painful it is. It's perfect. And I actually also would say to reassure people that life will go on, and you will be able to laugh again. You will be able to smile again. And in the hope that we have, you won't always feel like that, because at the time you can feel like you will never be happy ever again, kind of thing. Like life will always be dismal. But just hoping that God somehow gets you through each day, and you will laugh and enjoy your children, and find joy in life in the hope of the future. That's what gives you that hope.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
beautiful.
a pretty difficult question though.
Yeah, sorry.
You know, for someone going through it in the moment, it's a pretty dark time, and I I I think we might have mentioned this when we discussed to you before. You know, like people say that time heals. I've never quite been able to say time heals, but I think we can say time does help. A little bit of time, you know, the first sort of 3 days, and then 3 weeks, and then 3 months, and then the first anniversary, and you know the birthday, and all those things. They're just terrible days and milestones that people cope in all sorts of different ways, and there's no sort of one, you know, there's no easy answer. And I would kind of hate in a way for people to go away who either experience it or have experienced and say, oh, you know, I just don't have enough faith, and then I'd be able to deal with it. It's not like that at all. You know, for us, it's something like 18 years. And after 18 years, or in recent years, you know, we've been able to say to each other and, you know, agree and verbalize that we wouldn't change a thing. That may come across as weird because, you know, I know in those first weeks or months, if an angel had appeared and said, you want your daughter back? Well, of course you would have.
Yeah.
So it's not ignoring that, but it's just that what happened to us 18 years ago has shaped us and our family to who we are and what God's working on. So that's a process that he will continue to work on and finish. And you know, we've seen through little things and big things that God was with us. He's continued to be with us, and time will help, and there will be a bright day again.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know it's been a hard night for you, and, but we really appreciate it. And I know, yeah, this is probably the first Family Matters maybe that I've had where I've, you know, struggled with keeping dry eyes as well. You know, so yeah, you've been amazing. And I know you will have been a real big encouragement to a lot of people that are listening tonight, and a lot of people who are watching later on. So thank you so much.